So nature doesn't discriminate. I want to start this by saying I am coming from the Ojibwe land in Minnesota. It's very cold. The lakes are frozen, and I cannot go outside and play. And therefore, this sounds like the best opportunity to hang out with outdoors folks is to just be online. Okay, so gonna start. Also, I said this earlier, but some people probably weren't in the room, which was I don't often talk and do PowerPoint at the same time. And I'm going to be doing that today. So you all are just going to go with it and just appreciate the fact that we are in this space together and that I am trying really hard to multitask. All right. Okay. Baby Crystal. These are rare moments, rare photos in the life of Crystal Gale. You all are like, ah. Okay, so I grew up in Florida. Florida's the sunshine state. Outsiders, people not from Florida, tend to think of, these are my siblings, by the way, they're so cute. I didn't realize that was in there. Anyhow, I'm the one on the far left, the one that looks so entertained by the fact that my photo is being taken. So outsiders tend to think of oranges, alligators, rich folks, Disney World, yay, Mickey, palm trees, and sunny beaches. But Florida is also known for hurricanes and floods. As you might expect, maybe you don't, but as you might expect, um, property value in flood zones is a result of, uh, let me start that again. I'm just going to read from what I actually wrote and we'll just go with that. Everybody cool? Great, great. Can I just say that Oliver, you are making me really, really happy right now because you're one of the one people that I can see and it's great. Thank you. Anyhow, so Florida is also known for hurricanes and floods. So as you might expect, property value in flood zones is low. As a result, that is where the government placed public housing. At the time, there wasn't and still isn't meaningful conversations about how to lessen the impact of floods. And while a flood is an act of nature and non-discriminatory in and of itself, the inability to afford housing in non-flood zones is but one example of how social inequality connects to the environment. If you guys can see where this talk is kind of going. Ugh, sorry. Thanks, Oliver, for still being here. You make me smile. Thanks, Oliver, who's getting mad shout outs in this. All right. So my earliest childhood memories began in Jacksonville's public housing. So the playground for the entire complex, as you see there in the bigger picture, was about the size of 6 burial plots, right? So 15 kids would occupy this space after school and on weekends. The closest city park was nearly 16 miles away, and the only way that we could get to the park was to bike. And I don't know if anybody's ever been to Jacksonville, like it's not really designed for kids to be on bicycles biking around. My dad was a hardworking single father of 4. He labored 2, sometimes 3 full-time jobs to move us out of public housing and thus out of the flood zone. Thanks to his hard work and some luck, we moved when I was about 10 years old. In doing so, we had to sacrifice. My dad didn't go to sporting events, school plays, or talent shows. He wasn't present for dinner and seldom tucked us into bed. We upgraded out of the ghetto into a low-income white neighborhood on the outskirts of town. Oh, this is here, right. So when we lived in a flood zone, this picture was to remind me to tell you this story. When we lived in the flood zone, I would walk down the street, like there was one day where it flooded and I was at school and I needed to walk to school, I needed to walk home, but we didn't have cell phones or telephones back then. I just know that I need to go home because I was always supposed to go home after school, but the street flooded. So I had to swim to my apartment to the left. I had to swim down this street. And I ended up getting sick. I got hepatitis from swimming in this river. And so, not river, like swimming just to get home. So I just wanted to bring that up. That picture was there for that reason. All right. So, anyways, we upgraded out of the ghetto into a low income white neighborhood on the outskirts of town. My house is the one there. Those are three houses. My house was the one on the right. Um, in our new neighborhood, we had a large park with even more kids. An undeveloped wooded area um, separated the haves from the have-nots. From our respective neighborhoods, we'd meet up in the woods and play capture the flag. We use the names of our respective neighborhoods, but we might as well have said the haves versus the have-nots. So that is the park to the left, and then the right is kind of like the breakdown of how the neighborhood is split. So what split us was the woods. Okay. So I was younger than most kids in my neighborhood, and I stopped spending time in the woods right around the time the haves became aware of their privilege and no longer wanted to associate with the have nots. The haves staked their claim on the space, chasing the have nots out with force. One example was when the only Black football player on our all white team was hung from those very woods. He was stripped, photographed, and left dangling by his ankles for 10 minutes before someone feared they might kill him, and then they cut him down. So, a once enjoyable place was no longer pleasant or safe. And while the woods can't perceive race, humans and our social constructs do. All right, this is probably a shocking story, um, but I want to add that this was not the 1950s. This event happened in the early 1990s. I also just aged myself there, but whatever, we'll just go with it. Okay. In 2005, I was engulfed with deep emotional pain as Hurricane Katrina destroyed my native land in Louisiana. The people who were affected most by this natural disaster, they were Black. They were my kin. I sat and watched as my uncle's house floated away on national television. Blacks who were impoverished and due to systematic racism were most vulnerable. They lived in low income neighborhoods. They had no cars, no money, and no way out of town. The poverty rates for Blacks were and remained so high in that parish that many Blacks, including my kin, couldn't afford to live in areas safe from floodwaters. Within days, my family and those throughout the parish, a parish is a town in Louisiana. We don't have cities, we have parishes. Parish quickly ran out of food and potable water. Many died. The fact that thousands of Blacks in New Orleans were stranded for days with no food, water, or protection was a clear expression of the latent racism in our society. Hurricane Katrina wasn't just a devastating act of nature. Due to the racial inequalities that already existed, Hurricane Katrina uh, Hurricane Katrina also denoted how deadly systemic racism can be. And again, while nature does not discriminate, Hurricane Katrina is a blatant example of that people with privilege do. Most of those people are white. All right, we're gonna fast forward here to the age of 28. I am again aging myself. I was diagnosed with a non fatal rare brain disease. My body thinks and acts like I have a brain tumor. After countless surgeries, my medical doctors determined I would never live a healthy, normal lifestyle. I was informed that my life would be hallmarked by pain and immobility. And due to the debilitating effects of the disease, I couldn't work. I received medical disability, and at the time, I didn't qualify for health care through any source. Now, you might say, you're on disability. Surely you qualified for health care. That's not the way our government works. And I did not have health insurance at the time. Okay. So, because of my misfortune, I couldn't afford a second opinion, didn't have insurance. And for years, I sat depressed overweight, and stuck in the mindset that I would never do more and never be more. One day, seemingly out of blue, it dawned on me that if I was going to live in pain, I might as well live a full life. And I did. Yep. I began running and reading books in the neighborhood park. I found peace and healing amongst the trees in the park. I like to say that I read anyways, like I just read. So it wasn't like I had surgery and magically started reading. No, books are great and I've read them all throughout life. So yeah. So it was in the park, like being around the trees, like going to the neighborhood park, walking by it that I found peace. I didn't connect it. I didn't connect this peace or this feeling with like the trees to anything like meaningful. I just knew that when I was outside and in the parks or in the trees, then I felt okay. So over time, my health improved. So in 2014, I qualified for a neurological implant that restored my quality of life. That's the implant. People always ask what it looks like. That's what it looks like inside of my body if you were on the outside. That's what it looked like before they installed it. Then they installed it, and that's what it looks like now. So over time, my health improved. So yeah, I qualified for the neurological implant, restored my quality of life, which was good. And I made a decision to through hike the Pacific Crest Trail. With no knowledge of backpacking, limited funds, and only the ability to adapt, adjust, and overcome, I began the journey. In doing so, I quickly came to realize the freedom that nature provides in all of her restorative powers. I just like to say here, just a shout out, I really love the PCT. It's a beautiful place. Like you go through so many different environments as you hike. It's wonderful. Great place if you ever want to go. You should. PCT, time, joy. Oh, love. All right. So even with my improved health, I ended the hike early due to an illness. Right there on the right, you can see the selfie me at 600 miles. However, I completed 600 miles of the PCT. And the weeks I spent on the trail fostered a new sense of purpose. I wanted to invite children into the wonderfulness that Mother Nature offered, especially the forgotten children of incarcerated mothers. This inspired me to return to school to study adventure therapy and adventure education. I made this my mission. I made this mission my focal point throughout my graduate program while earning my master's degree from Prescott College, dope college. Um, since graduating, my focus has expanded to diversifying the outdoors and to make it more inclusive for everyone, especially Black people. That is, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I am Black. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I believe that, nature's a great place and everyone should have the opportunity to experience it. Um, yeah. So, continuing on, the narrative of far too many Blacks in our country is deeply rooted in poverty, trauma, living in survival mode. The increase in public exposure of police brutality against Black bodies in the past year has instinctively triggered me into survival mode. Most white outdoor folks can attest that a major part of being in the backcountry is being uncomfortable, hungry, cold, and tired. These are all skills that I developed throughout childhood. I developed most of these skills as a child. So, using what I learned from my recently discovered love for backpacking and my degree in adventure therapy and adventure education, I choose to hike. I've used nature as a backdrop to highlight healing. I've spent time hiking on trails all across the country. I recently completed a 310-mile through hike of the Superior Hiking Trail in Minnesota. It was a memorial hike. It was a memorial hike in honor of Mr. George Floyd, a Black man who was murdered by Minneapolis police officers. Um, yeah. So one thing that was so I started seeing on television that Everything around George Floyd's murder was, hi, here are a whole bunch of people of color who are out here protesting, burning down things, destroying their cities, and it's horrible. And I was like, yeah, it is horrible. However, there's more happening than just that. So perhaps we should pay attention to that. So I like announced my hike. I said, hey, everyone, I'm hiking. And the reason why I did this, and it's I I wrote letters to every newspaper, every news department, everyone along the trail where I would be hiking. And I did this because I am a black person in the woods in Minnesota, and we just killed a black man in Minnesota. So I wanted everyone to know, hi, I'm here. I sent photos. This is what I look like in my camping gear. This is what I look like without. So if you ever see me, know that you shouldn't shoot me. I described I would be, I would have hiking poles, I would have bear spray, which is pointless, by the way. Don't get bear spray. It serves no point. Just yell. So I like described what I would be doing, what I would be wearing. And I felt the need to do this. And a lot of people question, like, Crystal, why would you do that? Just go out and be in nature. And I'm like, yeah, I would do that, but this is not the environment, nor is this a safe space for me to be like enjoying what I love to do. Like me being the only like I'm not sure if anybody's ever been to Minnesota, but like as you move further north, like everything turns white. It's kind of like being like if you think about like the North Pole, like as you move north, everything turns white. That's true for Minnesota. So as you go north, like you need to recognize that it will be whiter. So as I was moving north, I needed to announce that. So yes, but one thing that really stood out to me most about um, George Floyd and everything that was happening was actually this photo here. So in the middle, you have George Floyd and he's holding his daughter. So then to the right of that, you have baby Crystal and my dad holding me. So like instantly I thought, you know what? At any point throughout my life, my dad could have been George Floyd. And that's the reality always. And so George Floyd's murder hit me hard. And so I hiked the SHT. I finished. It was fun. It was hot, lots of bugs. If you ever want to get eaten by Neesons, apparently that's a species of bugs, go to Minnesota, hike the SHT. So this summer, I will be hiking the John Muir section of the PCT. Although John Muir was an environmentalist, his ideologies were rooted in racism. Acknowledging that history is key to dismantling white supremacy in the outdoors. I hope to challenge the narrative that has framed the John Muir Trail so that we can engage in real conversations about racism in the outdoors. Environmental racism, such a cool. Environmental racism has deeply disrupted all aspects of my life starting from birth. I believe that social justice and environmental justice go hand in hand. I'm acutely aware that there is an imbalance contributing to a long-standing disparities and inequalities faced by Blacks who seek to spend time in nature. This is not nature's fault. I'd like to say this again. This is not nature's fault. It's the result of humans, mostly white, those in power, those who have the privilege to insulate themselves from the ecological consequences that nature sometimes brings. This imbalance is perpetrated by those who exclude and place barriers that make it difficult for BIPOC to go out and enjoy nature. All right. So that was me completing the hike. It was fun. It was a good day. That's my dog Karma. Good photo shoot. All right. So I believe we cannot solve the we cannot end discrimination and exclusion in the outdoors, or the culture of whiteness or white supremacy that has existed in the outdoors without including BIPOC. I believe somebody asked that question somewhere, and that's kind of my response. but I wrote down the question so that I have the answer for whoever wrote that. I don't remember. Anyways, trees. It all comes back to trees. Life could be reduced to just love and trees. The truth about nature is whether you go for a hike, visit a river, or witness a flood, you see the purity, wholeness, and sacredness that's inherent in nature. Nature only gives you what you need. She doesn't see color, gender, religion, sexual orientation, or nationality. She doesn't ask questions and she doesn't discriminate. Well, that's the end of that. I know there were questions and I looked them up. That's the end of my actual talk, but there were questions and I looked it up because I wanted to give the person an actual response. I don't know if the person's here. If the person's here that asks, how do we make racism? Wait, no, that wasn't, wrong question. Someone asked something along the lines of making the outdoors inclusive, I believe. I didn't write down the question exactly. So
how do we make the outdoors more inclusive?
yeah, you don't ask Black people because we didn't create the problem.
Right.
But
No, I agree. Inclusion is the people that are already there adapting themselves for the folks who aren't so that they're welcome. That's how
yeah,
I feel about it.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I have this question. I have this answer for this person, but I don't remember the question. I'm sorry if you're on this call and you asked the question in this chat about something that was going to take place. My answer is this. I
This might be it from Sebastian. He says
okay,
nature doesn't discriminate, but there is implicit bias within the people that work within this field. So what can we do to mitigate this?
that was Sebastian. Thank you, Sebastian. So yes, I think it's important to understand that that you're actually having a negative impact on people. Like you are hurting people. You're hurting people that look like me. So racism has been a part of the outdoors for so long that it continues to be, it just continues and continues and continues. Even by people who don't consider themselves to be a racist, it still continues because it's ingrained, it's how it is. So I posed a question in a poll that says, is the outdoor safe and inclusive of BIPOC? 87% of people said yes. 13% said no. I think that they do like some weird statistics because there wasn't like, well, I guess it's in percentage. So yeah, that makes sense. So 87% says yes and 13% says no. But then I think about the people that took this survey and I think about where we are in this conference and I'm like, okay, I can get an idea of why the answer was yes. So I think it's important that the first step, because I personally do not think that the outdoors is safe and inclusive of BIPOC. So I think the first step in, like, I don't know, reducing implicit bias would be to listen to and believe BIPOC when they share their experiences. Instead of saying, yo, the outdoors, it is safe, believe people's life experiences. Ask people their life experience. Ask and be prepared to listen. Entertain the idea that someone else may be different. Someone else may have a different opinion, a different life story. And then, most importantly, we all do this because we all work in the outdoors or we all do something in the outdoors. Okay. You just need to slow down. We just slow down. Okay. Think for a moment and listen. Okay. And that's kind of like how we shift things. I don't know if you've ever worked with a young person who's like really, really agitated or like really, really escalated. You don't want to come back at them with that same intensity. You like slow down, like you slow down your breathing, you take a moment, you listen, like, hey, what's going on, kid? Like, what's up? So that's the same thing that you want to do when it comes to like working with your implicit bias. You don't want to just be quick to, hey, kid, what's wrong? No, you want to like slow down, listen, and then make a shift within your own self, like start checking yourself. And start check well, be careful about checking other people, but first start with yourself. Yes, that was the answer to Sebastian's question. Maybe, possibly, if you have follow-up questions, Sebastian, you can type them in. Um, but I guess I can read the chat now, maybe. Yep.
There
Yeah.
are a lot of comments in
Oh,
the
okay.
chat, and a lot of them, I hope you have a chance to go back and read because a lot of them were just such affirming things. Uh, like people were talking about when you were talking about northern Minnesota that Cecilia said that she was in Wisconsin, and Isabel, who used to live in Eli, and they were feeling connected to your story there. Ellie wanted to congratulate you on that superior hike. Eric, who likes your dog's name, uh, Sebastian, who asked the question, and Kate, who pointed out that by definition, inclusion is something that's done by the people who have the privilege. It's not for the people who've been left out. Uh, Cecilia points out, and Cecilia, you might want to speak to this. We have seen so much backlash to statements like that, quote, racism exists in the outdoors, or BIPOC people don't feel safe in the outdoors, and so on, especially last year.
Yeah, I think with all the racial tensions that came up last year, that racial tension came up in many different areas of life. And one I have a connection to is the outdoors community, hiking community, backpacking, and all of that. And I have seen amongst people I know that sort of backlash when the topic comes up, where some people just don't want to think about that or admit that it exists, or puts the blame on people of color for feeling that way. And on social media, especially, I'm sure some of you saw some of the really ugly exchanges that happened when these topics would come up. And there were a few people of color type hiking groups that were created to kind of create safe spaces as a result. And it continues to be an issue, like big, big explosive arguments and whatnot. And I think myself as a brown woman, what I can do is just keep being out there, keep going out, keep hiking, keep backpacking, encouraging others to come along, to get comfortable, to feel safe. I have a friend I've been hiking with this summer. I mean, last summer. She's Vietnamese and experienced a lot of discrimination due to coronavirus. So she was not comfortable going on her own. So that's another example of stuff that's going on. And yeah, people do say stuff on the trail. You do get those looks and whatever, it's alive and well. And Crystal, congratulations on doing your JMT this year. That's exciting. I've done a few sections of it, and I think I've only seen one Black person out there. And I made a point to introduce myself and say hi. So there definitely is a need for us to go out.
Yeah, for sure.
And everyone, we are about to run out of time. I don't know if this room might just close like a snap. So if it does, know that. Eric asked a really important question, and I'm hoping that Cecilia's answer may have addressed that into some way, because Isabel is feeling that too, and it has to do with how can how does the person, what is the role of the BIPOC person in changing that scenario? They can't just wait for somebody to come along and say, hey, you're included. So what is that role? And 30 seconds or less, we'll
30
solve
seconds
it.
or less. I agree with what Cecilia said, which is to immerse yourself, like go out there, uh, call in people that look like you, bring them out to the trails. It's important to explain to them, like, hi, this is a trail. These are the reasons why I like the trail. These are the reasons why I like being in nature, and not like spend so much time talking about like the negative aspects. Like maybe address that, like, hey, what are some fears you might have? It's similar when you take a group of kids outdoors. You want to explain to them, like, here's where we're going, here's what we're going to do. People need to feel safe. You offer that safety as an individual. So hi, whenever I take my family, who are now all into hiking suddenly, outdoors, I always have to explain to them, show them on a map, this is where we're going. You can take a picture with your phone so they know where we're going, they know where to be safe. Like, I talk them through this, and then, you know, we go out together. Go out with as many people, call people, text people, like, hey, meet me on the trail, meet me do this. I believe that visibility is important. Visibility matters, and as many of us, Eric, get out on the trail, like, the more of us that are out there, the better it'll be for other folks. It kind of sucks that we have to, like, you know, be the path starters, path creators, but it's got to start somewhere. And I mean,
True.
might as well start with you, Eric. Make it out there.
Go Blaze.